it's a bit hard to see, but I can also show you a bit then later how it looks like if you then do the demo and so on. But just like to quickly capture, so it's great to be here today, also in-person meeting, and I think also from the location-wise, it's quite a good location to talk about the multi-view experiences, because also if you think about it, a football stadium, normally 20 cameras, 30 cameras, and there's so lot of content that's being captured, but actually you don't see inside a TV feed. So normally you see it like 5 to 10 seconds, but it would be so cool, for example, to just see the full game out of the spider cam perspective, or focus on an individual player camera, or see the trainer's reaction. And what we are doing there is basically, just quickly, next slide. So what we are focusing there is, we are thinking how we can utilize all that content to then bring it together into one meaningful user experience. And what we think about there is, so why do you actually need multi-view? And the reason is because everyone watches sports a bit different, right? So am I interested in that particular person? I want to see what he is doing. And the other, I'm watching with my friends, and he's maybe interested in the more tactical overview there. So it has a lot to do with this fan engagement aspect. So it's about personalization, it's about giving the viewer the choice to then select to what to choose there. So and then if you think a bit further, it's also about thinking, and also next slide, about how can we transition from the existing TV experience there to even enhance a bit more the experience. So when we look at the normal TV there, then everyone gets the same signal, right? And that's perfectly fine, because I want to sit back and then just relax and see a good football game there, or also in other sports. But then there is these moments that really want to deep dive inside the experience. Especially we have that in motorsport when something happens, when there's an overtaking and stuff like this. I just want to see it and switch to the driver and see it out of the onboard camera perspective. Or I want to get a bit more overview when switching to the helicopter. And then because we also have the joint presentation together with Stats Perform, data basically plays the key role there, because data helps you then to make all the content meaningful for the actual user. So if you think, for example, about a football game there, and then you have maybe like the two behind the goal cameras, and that's a really nice view because you see the game out of a different angle. But then what you don't have is each, depending on where the action is actually taking place, it's just one camera is relevant. And you don't want to have a full operations teams just for this multi-view experience. So now you can simply use the high quality data to then pick and choose which cameras you actually show to the viewer and what's relevant for him. So you create these topics, these themes for individual sporting types where you say, oh, that's the behind the goal view, or that's the goalkeeper view. And then you also do an optimized production, but not just in the production at the broadcaster facility, but actually at the end user, fully personalized to what he wants to see. And that's a bit the direction we are going there. So please, next slide. So and there we're also looking at, for example, the different types, what camera feeds are even available. And of course, we all know them already in the motorsports, where this is already a thing there, where you have this onboard feeds, you have the different driver, the cockpit camera. But now also when it comes more to the 5G and stuff like this, where suddenly mobile cameras become much more relevant, to then also have the abilities to work with helmet cameras and to really have these emotional cameras there that you see what the athlete is doing and just follow him through the gaming action. So and then when we go to the next slide there, so it's then also to think about what we are actually working at, especially as a broadcaster, right? Because we're fighting for the attention span there. And then also to use data, for example, to pick and choose the right content moments out of the vast amount of content there and present it to the user exactly at the right point in time. Because I don't want to have like 30 cameras, and I don't want to, like, I need to know then when the relevant stuff's happening. And we will look a bit later then into the data, how it can help you to actually bring this content forward, and then tells you basically what are the exciting moments in the game. And also if you then have the highlights reel after the game to just get a quick summary and then personalize with the camera angles there and with the multi-view experience then for your liking. So it has a lot to do with the highlights and then also providing this in terms of the attention spans of the actual viewers. And if we go to the next slide, so and then it's also the topic about how does this work for multiple sports experience, right? So we talked a lot about football, a little bit about motorsports, but all sports have the individual moments there. So yesterday, for example, we talked about also golf, and there you might think, so okay, so that's a different thing. in compared to a football game where everything happens at one space, or you have the racetrack, which is a bit more extended. But golf is then also a lot of where multiple activities happen all over the golf course. And there we think a lot about how we can combine that together then to then also let the user choose and jump to the positions when multiple holes are being played at the same time, but just to don't miss out on the relevant information there. So and to be able then to provide this technology, because in the end what we are looking at NativeWaves there is to give, for example, broadcasters and content provider the technical tools available, a technical framework, but also the platform then to deliver those experiences easy inside the application. So it's then not about replacing the existing streaming location that they already have, but then to be able to just incorporate all those new features and then help them to bring this to the next level so that they pick and choose if they have the multi-view for this specific sports experience, maybe just one single view for the other one because multi-view is not always available, but then use the data to create this even real compelling experiences for all the vast portfolio of content that they have. And now when we go to the next one, then it's also about going a bit deeper into the data, what you can do with it. And I already mentioned some of the examples, but the big key thing is there, the context-related data. And we see it a lot with what you have in football now with the XG scores, where you have this predictability, you have also, like what was the percentage that the goal goes in. And to be able to just pop this up to the user when the user is watching it in a football experience, that's kind of then the key there. And then for me to decide what data should be displayed to me, right? Because I don't want to be overwhelmed. Maybe I can't, as a broadcaster, I can't show it in the main TV feed. But on, for example, a smartphone solution, in addition to my TV feed, I'm perfectly able to make this really personalized there because then I get the right data information, what I want to see at the right moment in time. And there then the point comes in, and I will also show it a bit later, about the synchronization aspect of it. Especially for one specific event, when I have now the vast amount of content coming in, plus the data to be perfectly aligned with each other, but then also if we go forward and then also watch on multiple devices with multiple people. Because when we go to the next slide there, then this is the topic also what we also saw during the pandemic. It's about watching in sync also with my friends. And it might be the synchronized watching when you have this watch together functionality, you're at multiple remote locations, you just want to enjoy a game together. But it's also when I watch with my family inside the living room and everyone is also playing on their device, right? And everything is desynchronized nowadays. So what we're looking there is also a technology that helps you to perfectly synchronize the different devices together. So if there's a goal happening on the TV, nowadays we have like the 30 seconds latency and the goals happens afterwards, or already get my notification pop up from a football app and getting the data information there, right? But it would be really cool if I get this from the broadcaster directly, that it doesn't matter where it's happening, you have to synchronize signals and the content flow together. And this is what we can deliver basically. So we can deliver this, technically speaking, to synchronize those feeds together and then have still the low latency live signal basically on the TV, but then on the additional devices, you have that perfectly synchronized together. And I will show you now quickly with the demo, I hope you can see it a bit there when we go to the next slide, then also a short overview. And I can also show you then a bit later on the mobile phone if you want to, how that looks then in the real world. So there we have then the functionality, and that's just an example. So we give them the framework to the broadcaster to build it in, but then you have the possibility to also choose and pick between the different camera angles at the right moment in time. So that all happens with the live signals, and this is just a mobile example, right? So and you can have that basically also when I'm watching the TV, you can have that also on your mobile phone there and have it perfectly synchronized to each other, or you just have it as a standalone experience on your desktop, on your smart TV and so on. And you then really think about is, for example, what data you want to display each time. For example, the formation, player stats. I mean, that's basic data, right? But if I'm a bit late to the football game, I just want to see who is playing and then also deep dive there. So their data is the perfect example on how the experience can be easily enhanced with a small step, how I can enhance this with a playback experience. And then, of course, we go a bit deeper into more deep analytics, also for the fans, especially if I then want to deep dive into the standings and stuff like this. And we also saw a bit before, for example, XG scores and so on, to then have that there. And then, of course, for football, the instant replay functionality is probably the way to go then when I want to have, for example, a capability to just rewatch a specific moment. There's so much going on, I might just have missed a goal or a specific foul, and then I want to see it. Did he touch the ball? Did the ball went in? And then just watch it out of different angles. And that's especially then what we're looking there. And then of course you have this vast amount of integration possibilities, but that then's basically up to the broadcaster or to the content provider, depending then on their needs, to then build together this product that fits their needs and also their viewers they have when it comes to e-commerce, betting integrations, and so on. And then last but not least, we also have the synchronization there, especially what I talked about when you have the main TV. And basically what we can do there is, for example, a simple solution is the smartphone listens 5 seconds to the audio signal of the main television and then is able to easily synchronize the additional live feeds perfectly together with other devices. And that also works if I'm now with 10 people in the room and we're all watching together, but then we have the synchronized experience and I watch just on a different player and it's still synchronized what's happening on each other devices. So you can suddenly watch, the one watches a replay, the other one watches, for example, different camera angles, and then you have this interaction suddenly and you don't have the latency problems and the synchronizations in your living room there. But I now will hand over from the stats perform data point of view, then so that we talk a bit about more what you can do with the data.
Thank you, Christof. Thank you. There are 2 or 3 slides in this deck about some particular data options you can have, but you know the data options, as probably most of you know, probably run into hundreds for any sport, and particularly football. One of the biggest challenges that we see with our clients is that they're licensees of all of the data, but they get very little chance in a live broadcast to use much of that data. Many of them don't have pre-programs, they don't have half-time shows, full-time shows. It's turn the TV on, turn the football on, see the game is finished. And most of the broadcasters we talk to are very nervous about adding too much to the live broadcast. They're happy with the scorebox, the lower third graphics, sometimes maybe putting a few data points over the screen, but they're not going to fill the screen. And I guess US sports may be a little bit different. They've got used to more on-screen stats, but then there are more breaks in the play, so they're able to talk about them, and the talent is usually more comfortable with doing that. When I listened to yesterday and today, I mean, it's quite clear that, you know, everybody's got this challenge of how do I connect with the audience? Do I just let them turn the TV on and let it run? And probably, I'm not sure how many of you would put your hands up, but how many of you have watched a game from beginning to end without moving in the last month or so, the whole 90 minutes? Probably not many. How many of you get bored when your team is losing by a few goals or somebody else is doing something else on another screen? So yeah, it's trying to keep people's attention. So that was one of the things that I noted from this morning, you know, how we're going to connect with the audience. The audience also wants a wide range of inventory. You know, again, that the traditional broadcast is never going to allow you to show. So you've got to find some way of getting that to them, but keeping them on your platform somehow, because we all know that we're all doing it. We're watching a TV match and we're either looking at BBC Sport results or we're doing other things on another device. So keeping people on your platform, I think, is key. And then bringing the fan closer to the action. And I think, you know, with that demo that you've just seen, you know, you are watching a live game. You are watching you can choose all the stats you want. You can go flick backwards and forward. You can go back and watch a replay. And then, of course, you hit the sync button and you come back to the main screen. So quite unique in that respect. I mean, there's a couple of slides here. I mean, you've probably read this one already. I mean, there's lots of data that we can give to any potential partner, any potential broadcaster. If you just move to the next slide, I mean, that's just a summary. I mean, really just trying to add statistics to enhance the storytelling, but understanding the broadcaster is unlikely to let you do it on the main screen. Occasionally they will, but you've got to find another way of doing it. And I think the NativeWaves platform is a perfect example of how to do that. The next slide. So, you know, look, again, here's probably a very simple one. I'm not sure how many of you have ever seen this, but this is called Momentum. This is being used by Canal Plus quite effectively in their programming, and it's a simple way of using analytics to show you where the momentum in the game is moving from and to. They use it today in pre-programming, in half-time, full-time in their UEFA Champions League games because they're not allowed to touch the broadcast. Again, I think this application could be perfect to allow a Champions League game to show all of the other statistics, but away from the main broadcast. So the next one, I think we're going to identify when that game is won and lost. Again, just a simple graphic. I mean, we could have chosen, I mean, we've got quite a few Stats Perform people here today. Their challenges, there's probably 50 slides like this with different analytics that we need to find a way to get into the hands of the user, into the fan, because today you just don't see them. You don't see them. And the next slide, please. Again, moving to post-match analysis again, you can use the whole thing. This was in a live audience. They produced a graphic using that data, filled the screen. It can easily sit within the application. If you're a broadcaster, you can enhance the application with some post-match analysis without, again, having to mess up your main broadcast. Don't try and train the talent to understand all of this. I think Christof mentioned expected goals. For most of us, expected goals has been around for 5 years. 5 years, probably. There's probably not many of us that really understand what expected goals is yet. We just see BBC maybe overlay it on a screen. We know the talent won't talk about it. They're not comfortable with that. And they don't want to embarrass themselves with that. So you've got to find ways to get all of this content into the hands of the user. And I think with the NativeWaves application, you're going to find that, and you'll be able then to keep those viewers, connect them back to your main broadcast, keep them as your subscriber to the main broadcast, but give them those options. And the next slide, I think. So this is really back to Christof, but there are some examples here now of actual use cases, which I think are important here because you look at the viewing time and the dwell time using the application and the content with it.
Exactly. So especially also when looking at the experiences. So one key aspect is, of course, how can I actually bring it live? And in one key aspect there, you can build a nice showcase always, right? But then the key is how do I deliver now 300 games in the season and do that for multiple leagues? So and then it's about also the data quality preserved there to really be able to deliver those. And what we see there, for example, we did for a case in Germany directly with a broadcaster, Sport Digital, and there we delivered 25 live games. And what we used this for, we used it a lot of the learnings because we don't know yet what data actually works. So it's about then also figuring out what is the user and what is different user groups even using there. So it's about who they're clicking there, like at which moment in time they're watching, for example, specific match stats, and also what do they like and what do they don't like, give them the options. And it's then also especially when we talk about multiview again, is which camera angles work at which moment. Because if we go in the next slides, there we did a second Bundesliga game, and that was super interesting because we had the net camera there in the goal. And at the beginning, we were not sure, like, do people really look at those during a live match there? And we had an average about 8 minutes average time spent just on the net camera, right? And there were also 2 of them. So it's also, and we did deploy that as a second screen application to the linear TV channel there, Sport 1, who was the broadcaster for this one. And we just then had the synchronized second screen application, and we got average viewing times of 19 minutes, people staying inside the second screen. So that's 90 minutes on top of just watching the main TV there. And what we also figured out is, so which camera angles do work at which points in time. So for example, I mentioned the net goal camera there, and there was also a penalty kick. And so it's also now about identifying those specific key moments because it's so emotional, right? Because suddenly you say, hey, watch it out of the goalkeeper's perspective. You click there and then the app just shows you the different angle. And then you see the ball flying towards you. And it's just a different feeling than just watching it out from the more abstract TV view there, because you're more disconnected to it. And then to also see if people, for example, pick even up the trainer cam, because then also to see their emotion and how they react, and at which moments in time that is relevant for a user. Is it relevant then, for example, when we get the data information, there's a prediction that the goal is happening in the next moment, right? Should it then pop up the trainer camera for the user? So what's relevant at which point in time? And there we are now using those use cases to basically measure and then also see how the user is engaging with those content. And then if we go to the next slide there, we also did a very nice, on the IBC and the Accelerator program. So we worked with lots of partners there Also a lot of presence on this event. And the idea there is so that we think also about how 5G can help us. And the first case was, of course, the obvious one where you have the mobile cameras there. But the nice thing then is also to think about Multiview a bit different. So we just used, for example, the 5G remote production with the mobile cameras and tried it out how people also then respond to when you have, for example, a 5G camera stream outside of the stadium inside your normal OTT streaming experience. So this then also was streamed on a mobile, tablet, but also desktop. And there I could also pick and choose. So I had the produced TV feed in there, but I also had the different mobile cameras. And then especially when, for example, a goal happening, it's so a nice feeling because I see the people there and then the fan sector and then everyone is cheering and it just gives me this raw feeling, right? Because it's not really a produced feed. So it can't quality-wise can catch up with a normally TV produced feed, but it gives me a different feeling to actually being there at the field and then just participating in also the celebration that's happening inside the stadium. So this is what we're experimenting now a lot. And also what's super then interesting is to which different camera works also for other sports outside of football there. So and if we go to the next slide then, so then it's also of course to integrate different kind of interaction abilities there, of course, when it comes to engagement, also fan engagement. It's also about, for example, live chatting functionality and so on. But just the possibility to connect, for example, all this content experience to just be a distribution vehicle where you can have the data, the content all together, but then also connected with your other providers. And that's the big information there to then also think how this could look like inside one user experience to combine the different partners together. And then if you go to the next slide, then it's of course, I mean, it's a bit of a buzzword, but we all heard it and probably been asked, so what's about the metaverse and stuff like this? But there are definitely, especially in sports, there are use cases that actually make a lot of sense. So, and we are now looking at all of those now. And for all of them, it's key to also find the connection between different cameras, but also data there to build those experiences. Because in the end, I mean, when we talk about metaverse, it's a lot about augmented reality, virtual reality applications. But then in the end, it's about how to even bring those content experiences inside the metaverse, basically, to fill the space there with content. And then we look, for example, at a bit more classical use case where you have the virtual reality, right? You can watch a normal football game, you have the 360 camera in your stadium seat, you watch this at home, but then also it goes more advanced when you think about augmented overlays there. And there we like some great examples also from PT Sport and so on, what they're doing now with the player overlays. And there, the data, again, this integration plays a key aspect to how can I bring this actually to my users there. And then also show, for example, how is the defensive line connected to each other, right? And that might not interest every user, but if I'm maybe a fan from a particular team, to just for me, I toggle on the defensive line and now seeing this moving forward. And to be able to also integrate that, that's then a bit where we think then in the future to how this could look like. And then of course, when you have then the racetrack or the football game directly on your living room table. And with this, I think that was the last slide, and that was the idea a bit also from today, to bring a bit nearer to like the multi-view, what's connected to it, but then also how we can bring together the audiovisual elements with the data elements. Thank you.